Happy day everybody, my name is Jeremy and this is Barbecue Elementary. Today I'll be making ribs using cocktail cherries, as well as an old-fashioned to pair. Let's go. This week I wanted to challenge myself a little bit to make a glaze out of ingredients that I already had, as well as try and pair some sort of drink. So when I opened my fridge and saw a full container of cocktail cherries that had been around a while, it was a no-brainer. And that really only left one question: which whiskey should I use? And to answer that, I'll just say, stick around. I started out as one often does with these 3-pack of Costco St. Louis cut spare ribs. I decided to use only one with this new recipe that I never tried, that way I could use the other two to feed my family. So I played it safe with a tried and true recipe with those and picked out my favorite rack to try out the cherry glaze. I then patted it dry, ladies and gents, and went on to remove the membrane from the back of the ribs, using essentially the same process as Steve Carell's wax job in the 40-Year-Old Virgin. I also did a quick trim of excess fat, as well as remove a couple of the bones on the thin end here, that way I didn't have any burnt ribs. After I got them all squared up and looking beautiful, it was time to season. I simply used black pepper out of my beautiful pepper grinder that ran out. If you are looking for some nice black pepper, I recommend the Telecherry peppercorns. I just find these on Amazon. They are amazing and very easy to find. And then the only thing I used after that was Lawry's seasoning salt, just the original kind, something that I've seen Jerby do and that I've had great success with. You also may notice that I didn't use a binder. I'm not completely sold that you need one if you're gonna let your ribs rest for a while, because it'll tack up no matter what. If I was making a bunch of racks and needed to move them quickly, I would definitely use one, but not on these. It was then time to perform a sacred ash removal ritual to evict the ghosts of barbecue past. I then prepared my chimney to get some coals going. I only put about a handful or two of charcoal in there because I plan to have unlit charcoal on the other half of the grill. That way the idea would be that the lit charcoal would slowly light the unlit charcoal and extend my grill/smoke time. I'm not exactly sure if I got the desired effect I wanted from all of these hickory chips. I think next time I'll probably try bigger chunks. Let me know in the comments if you've had experience with both and which one you think is better. My plan here was to do a 3-2-1 method and keep the grill around 250 degrees the entire time. If you do not know what the 3-2-1 method is, it basically means that for 3 hours you'll cook the ribs by themselves just on the grill grates using smoke and basically not messing with them. Then for 2 hours you will wrap them, sometimes in a sauce or glaze like I will be doing today. And then for the last hour you usually will take the foil off and add a glaze, and then leave them uncovered in the smoker for another hour for the glaze to tack up. Once the ribs were on the grill, I decided to make a little spritz to help keep the ribs dry if needed. I just went 1 part rice vinegar and 1 part water. Typically I'll use like an apple cider vinegar, but I didn't have any of that, and again wanted to stick with my challenge of using ingredients that I had, and I think rice vinegar is and was a great substitute. And a quick note, this was the first time that I've used this cheap Zep sprayer from Home Depot. I know a lot of guys use it, and honestly, it's the best one I've ever used. And maybe someday I'll get one of those nice hog sprayers and love it, but it just kind of goes to show you that sometimes the cheap thing does the deal. Speaking of things that aren't cheap, these were the cherries that I used for the glaze. And now I probably would never have used these for this application, but because they've been sitting in my fridge for a while and I didn't think I'd ever actually use all of them, I figured this was better than them going to waste. So I added about a cup full of these cherries and left some of them unchopped. There might have been a better process to do this part, but I thought they looked pretty good. I also added about a half of a cup of syrup from the jar. Then for about 5 minutes before I added any of the extra ingredients, I just had this heat on kind of medium-low to bring some of the liquid out of the cherries before adding a 1/4 cup of honey, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, a tablespoon, not a teaspoon, of Dijon mustard, then 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce, a teaspoon of black pepper just for a little kick, a teaspoon of kosher salt, and a teaspoon, not a tablespoon, of cinnamon. Then after everything was stirred in nice and proper, I kept this on low to medium heat for about 10 to 15 minutes until it started to thicken. And I made sure that it was still thin enough that I would be able to spread it easily with a brush, but it was thick enough that I could coat the back of my spoon. After about 3 hours and maintaining pretty perfect temps at around 250, I started to really like the color on these ribs, and they were temping out at about 162, 163, so it was time for the wrap. I had already pre-prepared 2 perfect sheets of aluminum foil. I always use 2, that way it'll be a little bit extra protection in case there's a tear in one so that the liquid contents don't go all over my grill. And decided to keep it extra simple. I only put the glaze on top of my ribs and then just kind of an extra little bed on the foil, as well as about 4 big pats of butter. Then it was time to say good night, so I wrapped these ribs in the blanket that will be their bed for the next 2 or so hours. Then I decided to pick which bourbon I was going to use for my old fashioned. I decided this E.H. Taylor small batch, something that I've never made a cocktail out of and really like. After 2 hours and a couple sips, these ribs were temping in the 190s, and so it was time to add the additional glaze and allow it to tack up for the last hour. And you could probably get rid of some of the liquid at the bottom, but I just decided to prepare everything on the grill, so I made a little boat out of the foil, added most of the rest of the glaze, and it just got it ready to pile on more smoke and flavor. Because it was almost eating time, it meant it was also almost drinking time. And I decided to make just a really simple classic old-fashioned. I used 2 ounces of that E.H. Taylor small batch and added it into a chilled mixing glass with 2 dashes of Angostura bitters and a 1/2 ounce of simple syrup, and stirred to chill with small ice. I actually kind of like to dilute a little bit here and use a big rock in the cocktail glass with a little bit of a spritz of the orange and of course the cocktail cherry. And of course I know there's a million variations and things people love to do, so tell me how you make yours in the comments below. Cheers. After the last hour, I decided to use my hands, which I don't recommend, to take the ribs off the grill because they were looking beautiful and were ready to eat. And besides looking beautiful, these were actually really good. Probably not something that I would use as a glaze again, as kind of that dark cherry syrup is a little bit more muted. I would prefer something a little bit more vinegary, very sweet and bright. But this cook definitely added a layer of confidence to my skills that I can kind of whip up a glaze from almost anything that I can find. And I think I did a pretty dang good job cooking the ribs on the Weber kettle. That is it for this week's video. Thank you so much if you made it this far, and as always, thanks a million for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't to follow me along on my adventures through Barbecue Elementary.